4 things you must do if your husband watches porn. I'm Dr. Trish Lee. I'm here to tell you what they are. Okay, number 1, you have to accept the fact that what you found is true. This is not as easy as it may seem when I tell you, or if you're in it, you might know accepting it is very difficult for you. And if you've seen some of my other videos on my YouTube channel, then you know that coming to acceptance isn't a one-step process. It's a multiple-step process. It's like the grieving process. So what happens is you may be in shock when you first find out, and especially if you find out that the pornography that he's watching is violent, if it involves minors or very young people, if it has anything that you consider to be extreme or weird or outside of your husband's moral and value code, that may come as a major shock to you. And then after shock, you may be very angry. And many times that is the first response that a woman has. And that's totally normal. That is exactly how the grieving process goes. Shock and then anger. Then sets in denial. Maybe it's not as big of a deal as I thought it was. Maybe it wasn't as often as I thought it was. Maybe those images aren't as violent as I thought they were. They are. That is your nervous system. That's your brain trying to get back to homeostasis, to your normal life, because it does not want to be in this situation, and I can't blame it. But it will fight hard to bring you back to the life that you thought you had. So you have to grieve the process and go through it, because you will never have the life that you thought you had, because the life that you thought you had isn't the life that you had. And that's what you have to accept. So after shock and denial, and shock and anger and denial, then you may move into a time period of sadness, and you might be really, really sad, and you have to grieve the loss of the life that you thought you had. But once you're able to do that, you can come out the other side and accept you're in this and you've got something to deal with. And I know it might be too early to tell you this, but you can actually use this opportunity as a growth opportunity if you're willing to. We can cross that bridge later, because I know you might not be ready to hear it. Okay, so that's the first thing. You have to accept it. I'm in this and I need to deal with this. And when you get there, then it's time to move on. It's time for honest and open communication with your husband, which will create vulnerability for the both of you. And you or him may not be able to do that right now. All of these things will take inner strength that you may or may not have. Honest and open communication brings the situation, the problem that you have, out into the light. And secrets are how the brain thrives in an addictive pattern, by keeping it in the dark. When you bring it into the light and you start communicating about it, hopefully in a healthy way, then it's time to move through it and move on to resolution, which is step number 3. Number 3 is you have to get help. This is not a fight that many people can do by themselves. And if you've been trying to do it by yourself and you have been failing, you know what I'm talking about. You need the proper help. And what has to happen is your husband's brain has to change so that it no longer has the compulsions and the urges for the pornography. And if you watch other of my videos, go watch them. Pornography is not about sex. It's about pain on the inside. And that's the medication that your husband has found to soothe the pain that he has, presumably from trauma in his childhood. And you are looking the other way, avoiding that pain if you're allowing yourself to stay in this cycle for too long. I get why you're doing it. I totally understand. But if you're actually going to solve it and move through it, you need to get help. You need the right help that can work on the brain mechanisms that are involved for him and for you, because likely your brain is running in an anxious mode and a depressed mode. And that is the mode that can't solve this problem. That's the mode that is either just seeing the problem and not the solution, or is just running low so you don't have to deal with it at all, which is depression. Okay, but I digress. Let's move back to what those steps are. You have to get the right help so that there's accountability, there's behavioral strategies, and there's brain mechanisms that are being changed. That's your best bet of moving through this quickly. And then lastly, step number 4 is that you need to set boundaries around porn use. So you cannot control what your husband does. You cannot make him quit. And if he actually is addicted, which most men who are found out by their wives, if that is a scenario that's happening for you, it's likely escalated from a porn habit to porn use, to porn misuse, to porn abuse, to porn addiction. And that's how that cycle kind of progresses over time. And so if you find that he's been watching porn for a long time and with some frequency and consistency, that has hardwired his brain in to need to go back for more to avoid the pain and what he thinks is a little bit of pleasure, but it's actually just avoiding the pain. When you set the boundary, but again, if you set a boundary, you have to be willing to deliver the consequence for that boundary. The boundary is, I will not be with you if you are watching porn. But if you find out that he's watched porn again, you have to deliver on the consequence where he needs to leave or you're leaving because you said, I will not be with you unless you stop watching porn. That boundary is the thing that can help your husband move his own threshold from denial to acceptance. So in the business, we call it D-Day, Discovery Day, when a woman finds out that her husband has been watching a lot of porn for a long time. That's D-Day. There is a gap between D-Day and what I call B-Day, Boundary Day. And that gap can be 5 minutes for some women. That gap can literally be 50 years for other women. I've worked with women who found out about that, no joke, 47 years ago, longer than I've been alive. And they found out that their husband had a sexual addiction or was masturbating or was, back then it was looking at pornography in magazines, which then progressed into internet pornography over time, literally for 45, 50 years, and they just avoided it. And 50 years later, their relationship's a hot mess, and they are now ready to set the boundary, B-Day, D-Day to B-Day, anywhere between 5 minutes and 50 years. I would love everybody to be able to do that in 5 minutes, but it takes time to grieve and come to acceptance. And that's what you need to do. So move through these 4 steps at your time frame, and when you're ready, get the right help so that you can get out of this situation and move into a better relationship than you've ever had with healthy boundaries. Okay, I hope that helps. And remember, control your brain or it'll control you.